Good morning, good evening, whatever part of the world you're hanging out in. Welcome to the Kroxylicious sync for the 21st of May. Mr. Young, you're first up on the agenda.
Yeah, so my first point is that, Keith had been investigating what's needed to upgrade to Kafka 4.3.0, and that brings some package changes within Kafka Clients, making some internal classes more hidden away. And they're things we depend on in the Kroxylicious filter API to do things like, transform records for record encryption. So we've had a bit of discussion on Slack about whether we should accept the breaking changes into main and sort of notify people that they need to update their filters, or whether we should look into forking Kafka clients, or at least, the internal classes we need and the serialization and deserialization code, that sort of thing. When's the right time to do it?
So we're talking about the data classes, the utility classes to build records, like the memory record classes, classes to do with indicating compression preferences, and all of those things that we rely on there straight from the Kafka internal as now demarked APIs. So yeah, this is definitely a painful, if we didn't do anything, it would be painful for anybody who is the filter authors who are writing filters that care about the contents of messages. If you're intercepting other RPCs, then it isn't a breaking change for you. But I think there's general agreement that this is something we should.
Because the request and the response classes will be in a different package. So it's every filter. I think so.
Oh no,
I don't know actually. Maybe you're right, but it's worth checking.
It's not that. The data classes haven't relocated as part of the upgrade to the next Kafka version.
That's really odd, because they should be, because they're also internal. So it's quite possible that they've been overlooked, and the a future version of Kafka changes those again.
Yeah,
that's not a circumstance we can rule out.
I will go back and check the PR again, but the PR is passing, and the only thing I remember having to refactor is things like the location of memory records, compression types, and things like that. There wasn't a rippling change through the filter interfaces and things like that. I'm just going to have a very quick look and make sure I haven't misremembered that. I think the question still remains anyway. The question is still a valid one anyway. At some point, there will be more changes made to data classes and things like that within Kafka, which will ripple down to us unless we address this at some point.
This is effectively the big bone of contention in the 1.0 proposal as well, isn't it? Our public API guarantees are limited to whatever the Kafka public API gives us, and as a case in point, this isn't public API, and therefore we're being broken.
Yes, which we've always accepted was the case, and we accepted that was a risk, and now we get to live with the consequences of that.
Yeah, I think addressing this before we reach 1.0 is definitely the right thing to do.
So are we?
Yeah, the data classes definitely don't change it as part of this release.
I think it's got to be worth a quick investigation to get a feeling for how big it would be to sort of try and fix this now. You know, you could sort of time box it and say, let's see how far through we get in, you know, 2 days or something. And, you know, you might not solve it at the end of that, but you should have quite a good understanding as to how much effort's involved.
Yeah. I'd actually asked Peter to take a look at doing just that, just to try and work out, you know, how hard this will be, what the pain points will be, what decisions we need to make. Peter, have you had a chance to take a look at that yet?
I have yet. Sorry, I was typing during the chat. I had Claude generate a document maybe at the start of yesterday, and now I'm actually verifying that it isn't completely hallucinating. So I've just I've gone to Kafka source code, and I've just been trying to actually come up with some bash scripts and other stuff to verify all the claims that's making and stuff like that. I'm going to post a link in the chat for what it put anyway, but it is a work in progress.
Okay.
But yeah, it did suggest a couple of approaches, and like it talked about maybe extending the KRPC plugin, but then that'd be kind of a pain because then we'd be making our own generator basically. But then obviously, like if we'd fork the generator, obviously the data classes are dependent on all of these other classes that we'd also have to fork, and then all these enums and like things for handling errors and other stuff. And then the surface does seem a bit bigger than maybe initially anticipated. So it gives a couple of approaches of how big the scope would be for depending on what you would want to do. So that actually gives a couple of options of like, oh, here's the smallest scope of what you could do to maybe fix the issue, and then here's like the bigger one, which would be eliminating our dependency on Kafka clients completely. But again, I'll have to look into it because I just want to make sure that it's not completely making stuff up.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think it'd be useful if you raise an issue with the output of your investigation, and I would just write down as you discover things there, and we can then help, you know, we can use our knowledge of Kafka and the problem space that we have to comment on that issue, to, you know, highlight things that maybe you or Claude haven't found so far. You can collaborate on it.
Yeah, I'll probably just paste that right now into the issue, but then give a big disclaimer that it's still a work in progress.
Thanks, Peter. I hate computers. It's just lost the agenda doc. Don't mind
I
me.
wouldn't blame computers in general. I think it's just Teams.
But this is Google Meet.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, that's just obviously computers then.
Where did you go?
Google Meet works fine. That must be, yeah, the problem between keyboard and chair.
Something exists between the keyboard and chair. It's debatably the problem. Right.
Okay, so just to be clear on this, so we're going to do this investigation first and then make a decision about what we do. And until that point, we're going to hold off upgrading the Kroxylicious main repo to the next version of Kafka. Am I understanding that right?
That's the logical conclusion, yes.
Fine.
There's not a burning need to do a 4.3 a release to support 4.3, is there? I don't think there's nothing particularly new or shiny in Kafka 4.3.
No, that's true. And the current Kroxylicious release will work with new version of Kafka and a new version of clients. There aren't actually any. I think there's one client-facing RPC that changes, which is to do with describing log directories or something. I can't remember the name of the RPC off the top of my head. And so it's not a kind of core RPC.
Mr. Young again. User 021 doc, user facing docs.
Yeah, so that was just as I was making the video for the 021 release, it was finding that it was nice to link to docs for everything that I could. And then, yeah, sort of realizing that plenty of our user-facing bits and pieces don't have documentation. Maybe some of them are arguably not like completely ready for prime time. Like I guess like the Strimsy integration, it's enough for someone to play around with, but I guess we might still consider it not still here. You've all frozen up.
Yeah,
I
you
can hear you.
stalled for a bit.
You're coming and going. I can see you there. But anyway, it was just a wonder about whether we could do anything to be more reliable in getting the user docs in. Sometimes PRs bring them in with the code changes. Sometimes we defer them and forget maybe, or I don't know. I wondered a little whether there should be, rather than release person just jumping in and starting to release everything, whether there should be a pre-step of checking if everything is looking good for the release. We're maybe not doing enough of that.
I think we need to shift that left a bit. We've already got the tick box on the PR, which is supposed to be our prompt to make sure that docs are either included in the PR, which we're obviously not adhering to completely at the moment. Maybe we need to pay a little bit more attention. Maybe we need to pay attention to that tick box. And maybe our process should be, if we're delivering a change without documentation, then maybe our process needs to be, issue needs to be raised before we merge the PR, just to make sure we've got something tracking that missing documentation. So I'd suggest making a change to our PR template to make us change our behavior there.
So you mean change it to also suggest creating an issue if docs aren't appropriate? Yeah. Okay, cool.
If docs are appropriate but aren't included in the PR itself. I can take an action to improve the PR template in that way, if that sounds agreeable to people.
It's in the docs, so it must be true. Mr. Young again.
Yeah. So this one is just, we've released 021. Now we're on to 022. What do we want to get done? I don't know if we can address it totally in here, but maybe people have ideas of things that they want to do very high priority. I put merge queues on there because getting stuck in the merge contention is still ongoing.
Yes, I think that one's really painful. It's not necessarily required for 022, but the sooner we do it, the more value we get from it. So I'm keen to see it in 022 scope. I'd like to see hot reload included in there. It'd be really nice to see that one actually rolling and at least available as a trigger. I don't think the ability to reconfigure Kroxylicious on the fly, it should be included in 022. I'm not proposing that we actually have a trigger that will allow the operator or anything to do so in scope for 022. Does that narrower scope work for everybody, or do people feel we need to build the trigger mechanism as well? I'm going to take silence as a break with. Sorry, Keith, go.
I don't think we necessarily need to have a trigger mechanism in place for the next release, but having all of the mechanism behind there for hot reload, having the tests working with that That seems like a good goal to have for the next release.
I think we can predict Silence's universal
You-
agreements there.
Yeah,
I
you could
intend
also
to.
probably have a look at the project board, which has got stuff that has been getting milestones on it. Maybe there's some ideas in there as well.
Rob Young, I think we should include the service annotations work as well for the next release. I think that's something we know we've got users out there who desire this feature. You've already got a PR open that seems to do most of that already, so let's land that too.
I guess arguably we can make a song and dance about the benchmarking stuff in 0.22 as well. So that's we've been quite quiet about all that work. So that's something we could mention in the 0.22 scope, because I now have some faith in the numbers it's producing as being reliable and repeatable. I have rebuilt too many clusters. Anything else anybody's got a burning desire to see in 0.22? Tom, you've been very quiet on this subject. I'll see if I can find the project board while you're talking.
Hello. Yes, I'm present in the room, but I'm not entirely in the room, but I am listening in, so yeah.
And that didn't automatically share. Oh, good. So this unreadable mess is the project board. Let's see if I can zoom into font size. So we've got infrastructure annotations, audit logger, security audit logging. Those two are approximately the same thing, presumably, or at least pointing at the same feature.
I think we should move those out of the release.
Audit logging out of 0.22.
Yeah. I think we've got enough going on at the moment to make that an unreasonable stretch objective.
Okay, Kroxylicious 1.0. Again, that's often design land, so that's deciding on future direction, possibly renaming 0.22 to 1.0. Does anybody have an appetite to do that latter step? Make the next release the 1.0 release?
I think we should continue thinking about how we get to 1.0, but I don't think we're ready at the moment to decide that the next minor release should become 1.0. So I think that question, we can answer that question later, but let's continue to look at 1.0 and work out how we get there.
Yeah, I think if we decided we want the multi-file configuration, then we can't get that done, as well as all the other stuff that we want to do this release.
Yes, agreed.
So that's the next one, isn't it? Rework proxy configuration. Or did you have something else in mind, Rob?
No, that's it.
So we do want to keep that in scope for 0.22 then. At least make a design decision on that. Cool.
Yep.
Java API versioning or SPI versioning. We seem to have two Java API versioning cards. I don't have any mental context for what this one's pointing at. Tom?
That's part of the 1.0 work, adding, I guess, stability annotations to the APIs or SPIs. So like our
Right.
interfaces.
Oh, so this is the Java counterpart to the config rework, the versioning.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So yeah, we're saying that's still in scope for 0.22. HA proxy protocol. I think that's a cheap thing to add, isn't it? But don't know where the demand's coming from.
I don't think it's a must do.
No, I agree with that. I'm not sure anyone is saying that that's a must do that I'm aware of.
Oh, so on that distinction are the versioning and config cards must do's or just want to do's?
If Kroxylicious 1.0 is must do, then those things or something equivalent to them seems to be must do if the most recent conversation we've had on 1.0 is what we actually all believe is necessary.
So I think my takeaway then is that the configuration and versioning stays in must do. Kroxylicious 1.0 moves to want to do for the next release. Anybody want to scream in opposition?
No, that makes sense to me, Sam.
Cool. It sounds like a bug in the webhook to do with the webhook. That's obviously must do.
Yep. That was just at release time. We have some docs metadata not hooked up that I added in manually because
Cool.
at that point the code was out. The docs PR wasn't merged by the time I noticed.
Cool. No worries. Okay. That feels like need to make sure the scope hot reload's missing from here. Where's that's a dog useful card? I need to go make a card for the hot reload work that can live on the project board that isn't just the stream of pull requests that represent that.
I think the upgrade to Kafka 4.3 moves to the want to do column, given our conversation earlier on about the internal classes of Kafka's.
Okay. Does anybody know what support Kubernetes auth method is in reference to for Vault at the top of the want to do list?
I think that was a user requirement to have an alternative mechanism to authenticate to Vault when running Kroxylicious on a Kubernetes container which has been wired up to Vault.
Cool.
We had a user request for that feature.
Oh, we should definitely try and do that then. I'd really like us to upgrade the compilation target to 21. There's some be nice to start taking advantage of that. But again, it would be good to have in 22. It doesn't like merge queues. The sooner we do it, the more benefit we get, but equally it doesn't have to be in 22. So I guess want to do is the right place. But I think I ought to take a note that I should sync these two sources of information up in the morning. So you have one canonical view of this. There's nothing left on the agenda because we've just worked out 0.22 scope, I think.
Question whether we want to keep 3240 per topic record encryption configuration.
Oh, sorry.
I think given the amount that we've got going on at the moment, I don't really think that's feasible right now.
Yeah. Was that being driven from a user request or just us going, that's a nice way to extend?
It was being driven by a user request, and it's really just a workaround, if you like, until we get to the point where we have a better way of driving filters from some kind of metadata source, which is obviously a long way off.
All right, take it out then. I'm taking silence as agreement. Last chance. Oh, I see some nodding heads now, finally. You are alive and listening. It's an amazing combination. That's wanted. Do we want to do proposal triage or issue triage next?
Just a quick thing on releases. So before this, we had, 21 and 22. Do we also want to start a release 23 board or version X so that we have sort of like the current one and the next one as a place where you can chuck stuff?
Yeah.
And maybe should we put a tentative release date on that as well if we're going with this releasing at a specific date?
Yeah,
I think
definitely do that. What was it? 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
I think 7 if we want to do 8 a year, so roughly 2 a quarter. So
Right.
that's right. So that will be what 21st of August. Our current other one is scheduled for July 3rd.
Do you want to set that up in the morning then, Rob?
Yep.
Sweet.
I'll just
Thank you.
do that, and if the date looks bad, we can argue on the PR.
Sounds like a plan. Does anybody have any proposals they wish to talk about today? Oh. No? Excellent.
Not exactly. So I'm hoping to refresh the routing proposal from getting on for a year ago shortly, based on a proof of concept that I know you all know that I've been working on, but for anyone watching the recording or whatever. So yeah, there's the API part to that, and also there's going to be a separate proposal for a router that's able to sort of switch between clusters. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that when it lands.
Looking forward to that one, Tom. Thanks. Any other proposals anybody wants to mention? Anything that's blocking anybody? No. All right. So this is what's in the triage queue directly from the agenda doc. Encryption. Is this the one we were just talking about?
I think it relates to the conversation we've just had.
Yeah, it's quite a while ago. It's rolled through a lot of releases. This is you tagging it. Gets to come back, Mr. Young. Is this something we want? Cheaper since 060. Is this something we want to try and talk about this week, or given the state of everything else that's in flight, do we continue kicking it down the road because it's over a year old, and still hasn't needed an actual solution?
I think this one needs to be kicked down the road, unfortunately.
Do I stick a triage label on it, or do we just keep ignoring it in these syncs?
I would remove the discuss sync, because I don't think we're ready to have that sync conversation about this at the moment. And I would stick a triage label on. We know we've got to do something in this space, but we haven't got the capacity at the moment to pick this up.
Yeah, I think I tagged them all as discuss sync just because I'd removed milestones off all of them. They're just sitting in space somewhere. So it's a come back and decide whether we want to keep them or discard.
Yeah. And because it relates to config No, probably not, because it relates to component structure. We don't need to label it as 1.0 because we need to have the wider conversation about how we potentially restructure config anyway. So leave it alone. All right. Deck sharing between encryption and decryption paths. That's just
So
a nice
this was an efficiency thing, wasn't it?
Yes.
In record encryption. I haven't looked at this issue for a while, but I remember it was a good idea. I would possibly stick a help wanted on this.
Yep. But definitely not in the good first issues territory.
No.
Design proposal needed? No, it's just an internal refactoring, isn't it? It doesn't. Yeah.
I think so, yes.
And on a similar basis, it's not something we're going to talk. We have the capacity to address at the moment, but we know we ought to do it, so it's triaged.
Yeah.
Right, that was everything that was labeled discuss sync. Do we want to try and approach this monster backlog of a issue triage?
I
Yes,
just point
let's-
out that if we don't address this monster, it'll be a bigger monster next time we have this call. So
Yeah. So I think there's a link in the agenda doc which gives you with the triaged, respecting the triage filter.
See, when I clicked that to start this discussion, that's the one that took us to discuss sync set.
Oh, okay. There's a
So issues tag discuss sync, issue triage. Let's see if that works. Yes, there. So it's just the one that was copied to the present something else. Is that the right one? Yes, that's the same list. Excuse me. Envelope encryption cache metrics. Yikes, this is old.
it really is.
Do you wish to spiral Claude code and deal with it, Mr. Godfrey?
I don't have that sort of technology on my really tiny, badly spec'd laptop. I'm just a manager. I'm not allowed to code these days.
Excuses.
I did tempted to close this one. I don't think this is something we really need at the moment. If we get a user request for it, then we can raise a new issue and prioritize it then.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
I think having an opinion is enough to be decisive and
Yeah. Go on. Oh, this is the. We have done things about this, haven't we? This is the. What do I do if I can't find my key in the KMS problem? In February last year, we declared this essential and still haven't done anything. That's embarrassing.
I can't remember enough about the issue to talk about this one. I know that, if you try and fetch a record that's encrypted and you can't, and the key isn't there, it's going to fail, which is
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
it'll be. I think it'll be to do with whether we interpret this as pass through or not.
yes, that's right.
How do you mean? Sorry.
Or maybe not for a failure. That was the other issue that we looked at before about having more complex routing rules for encryption is for the similar problem, right? That we decide whether to pass through unencrypted based on the KMS response. So like if a key doesn't exist in the KMS, then we take that as a signal to pass through unencrypted, unless they've configured it to never allow that, which is risky business.
Yes. I think on the producer path, I think maybe this has been superseded by the extra configuration we have. I can't remember the name of the configuration item now, but basically it says that the semantics are that it will fail rather than passing through unencrypted. I think it's stuff like you added, Rob Young.
That would be appropriate.
Yes, we added a. I can't remember the name of the key either, but yeah, a flag that says we can.
Yeah, there's a
lock down.
policy, right? I can't remember the name of it.
I mean, it's still. I think there are still weaknesses in the model, but it's probably not as critical as it was at the time.
Yeah, I think we need more specific issues raised, really. I'd be tempted to say just close this one. We've got 8.11. She's talking about the thing Rob was just describing.
So do we know what actually happens right now if you try to read from a topic and the KMS is unavailable?
It will fail.
Okay.
Fetch will fail.
Assuming we don't have the key cached, yes.
Yeah.
To detect invalid expired vault tokens.
So I think I raised this one about 1 million years ago. So currently the issue here is that it fails late if you provide it with a bad vault token. So it's not until a point of time that you actually try and produce a message or fetch a message that needs to be decrypted. You understand that your vault configuration and your KMS configuration is wrong. So I think the idea I was expressing here was to do some kind of ping to the KMS to early on to establish whether authentication was good. That was the idea I was expressing here.
Sounds like another word for help wanted, really. Still a valid and sensible idea to do.
Although you still presumably need to check and have a proper failure mechanism if the authentication expires when you actually try to use it.
Yes.
So it's just fail fast if you can.
Yes.
Should I take the highly desirable off it?
Yes. We can definitely live without this one.
There we go. Investigate hardening Kafka message received at the proxy. Oh, this is frame size related.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact cases, but yeah, it was just thinking about, I don't know, things like delays when we close connections and things like that as well to try and slow down reconnect storms.
It's all sorts of badly behaved clients, isn't it? Like telling us they're going to send n bytes and then never progressing.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of scenarios here that we should have test cases for. Slow clients, things like that. I would stick a help wanted on this. Not much to do.
Right.
Do you want to stick a triage label on that one?
Yes, I do. Separate filter factory contexts. I almost feel like we've done this.
Don't think so. Like the factory context and the context. I can't even remember what the problem is anymore, but there's definitely two contexts where there one context where there should be two. I'm sure this hasn't changed. I think it's the context at initialization, which maybe has like a null event loop on it, and then a filter factory context that's passed through when you're creating the individual filter instances where you do have an event loop. There's like some little subtleties.
Yes, the filter dispatch executors. There was
I'm
an
getting mixed up
operation exception.
Yeah, I'm just getting mixed up in my head as well. It always bothers me that there's one filter context for both requests and responses, and you can sort of call the wrong methods. But they look so similar. Having separate ones there is kind of
This one would, however, be a public API change, so it would need a proposal.
Yeah, it's labeled.
Right, yeah, so it is. Stick triage back on this.
Yep.
Help wanted. Because it's clearly not making it for our priority cut, given how long it's wandered around. Force minimum access rights on any confidential files. Keith?
This came from a security audit, which flagged up things like we are prepared to read from a password file that has world readable permission. And the security audit said, you should detect things like that and either warn about them or even refuse to operate with such a file. Yeah, like tools like SSH do this, don't they? I think it's a reasonable idea. To stick a help wanted on this.
Cool. We should probably go and stick help wanted on everything in the backlog.
Okay, I do remember this one.
Good, because I'm struggling.
So, I'm just trying to get the right formulation of words in my mouth. We currently don't test that we can really decode. There's a gap in our testing. Okay. Yeah, we should be doing something like serializing actual messages and making sure that they remain decryptable. So that's a pretty poor summary. This is an IT test strengthening exercise.
We should just get Claude to do it then. Undesirable comes off because it really isn't. Triage. If only we could just point a bot at the backlog and labels. Where did my filter go? There we go. Triage back on this then. Oh no, hang on. This is not the tag. Okay. Release process. Yes, so the stage release creates the GitHub tag and the no, it doesn't create the images. It just creates the GitHub tag and makes that publicly visible because you can't do anything else. While the artifacts themselves are still being staged at Maven Central and therefore aren't validated. So it's problematic. In theory, we could have to roll back the release because it fails staging and then retag. And the number of times our release process script piles up, we do tend to re-release things. So it's still a known gap. I think you had some comments the other day about reworking stage release, Keith.
Yes, I have got some ideas in my head about basically I need to write up an issue where I express my ideas clearly. But basically at the moment we have a CI pipeline which we use to test changes to main and test PRs. I think we should also use that pipeline to do our releases as well. So we should make the artifacts once, test the artifacts, and then if we're doing a release, then at that point it's those same artifacts that get shipped, not the situation we have at the moment where we're rebuilding multiple times. That's kind of a high level of where I think we should be. I need to write up an issue where I express all this down in a way that people can understand, and then if that's the right direction, work out how we chunk that work up to get us there.
Cool. I suspect we should maybe just close this because it's really turned into a bug about the existing release workflow as it was in March 24. So I suspect this is
stale. I think this is actually still a valid issue, but it's just one of many problems that we have in our current release process.
I think the headline description is still valid, but the issue itself is rotted.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
We should step back from how our release process works, think about how we do want it to work, and then issues like this should feed into it. Yeah, we shouldn't make release tags public until we're actually ready to ship the release.
Kroxylicious tends against older Kafka brokers. Do we not? No, we don't do this.
We don't. No, we don't do this.
It should be relatively. I'm going to take that back. It should be relatively straightforward to plug that into the system tests. It is still highly desirable, but
Yeah, it is.
It's not really.
Yeah, I don't really think this is the help wanted. Really, this is quite, this will get into how we approach all of our testing. I think this needs to be driven by one of us.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing, the new proposal I opened, because it's been something that's on my mind about how we do system tests. I think it feeds into that one as well, but there isn't the bandwidth to go pursuing that.
Just to confirm, we want this one on system tests level, right?
Yes, I think so.
Probably. I think it makes more sense there than as an integration test, but I don't really. Whatever's cheapest to execute, really. Build and execute. I don't have strong feelings about what layer in the stack it lives at, but so I'm sticking triage back on this because we still agree it's an important thing to do. I'll stick a system test on it as well.
This issue kind of dupes the HA proxy, exposing the HA proxy, or at least it's related to the exposing the HA proxy details to the filter API. You should be thinking about how that's done together, so we have a consistent approach.
I was about to say this kind of feels like it was superseded by the send request mechanism, the out-of-band dispatch. Why would a filter need to know the actual connection details?
Maybe it's not the issue I'm thinking of. Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the wrong issue when I spoke there. Maybe we should just close this one.
Yeah.
And let a use case emerge where it's required.
Sticking with completed because I think it's replaced. All right. We've got about 4 minutes left till the hour, which possibly means we're over time for this slot anyway. Anything else anybody wants to add before we wrap up? No. Do you want to sneak in one more issue then? Or just call it?
Just for the issue that I made, should we add labels to that?
So it would get triaged. It will be right on the, because it's a new issue, it will be right on the bottom of this list.
Yeah, so we've only got to August the 13th, 2024 so far.
Nice.
So we'll speak about it again in 2 years' time, Peter.
So yes, we should add a triage label to your issue just on the strength of the conversation we had earlier on. We definitely need an investigation in that space.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time this evening, this morning. Go off and be productive, those of you in Europe, and the rest of us are off to bed.
Good plan.
Thank you. Thanks for running this, Sam. Cheers.
Yeah. Have
Thank
a good weekend.
Cheers.
Thanks, Sam.
See you all.
Everyone. Bye now.